Did you get?
Good evening. We'll call this special meeting of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission at 6:37 p.m. Today is March 13th, 2024. Like to stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Karen, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will take attendance. Martha Putz. Here. Wendy Ann Fowler. Here. Brian Moore.
Here.
And Louise Sheedy.
Here.
I'll note that we do have a quorum. Okay. And we will go on to new business.
An old business, right?
Oh, so then only it's what you value on new business.
Could have been old business.
Old business, new business, continued business. The commission's discussion decision regarding application IW 23-08 for proposed development Long Meadow Apartments to be located over multiple parcels on Webb Road and Rubber Avenue. The applicant is Apartments at Long Meadow LLC. So we do have some drafts that we received along with all the other materials that we've all gotten and have been available to everyone. Ned, would you be able to summarize the information that we have about in front of us?
Sure.
Thank you.
So for the record, Ned Fitzpatrick, I'm Commission Counsel. And in connection with this matter, this is the application of the Long Meadow Apartments. It's IW number 23-08. Is this on?
Yes, it is.
People hear me?
Yeah.
All right,
If you can't hear, just raise your hand and we'll
all right.
make adjustments.
So the staff has taken considerable time and effort reviewing the expert testimony, public hearing testimony, correspondence that has been made part of this record. And as a result of those findings, the staff has prepared, as may have been mentioned in the past, several motions. One of those is on this application, a motion to approve the application with conditions, and I'll call that option one for purposes of the commission discussion. And my comments here, while they are public, are really intended for the commission. I'm directing all my comments to you, all of you commissioners, because you are the ones who make this decision without any more discussion with the public or their experts, any experts, whether it's the applicant, the applicant's experts, the intervener, the intervener's experts, or others. This is a decision that's vested with you under the law. And there will be, I'm going to request that you make two decisions tonight. I'm going to ask that you make a decision on the application number IW 23-08. I'm going to summarize the draft motions that the staff has reviewed based on the record for approval of the application. And then also a draft motion for denial. It is felt that there is sufficient evidence, expert evidence in the record that could support decision either way in this case. Which means that the determination, and a lot of the evidence is scientific. It's expert evidence, most of it. And that determination rests with you in terms of the credibility of the witnesses. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, not only is that power rested with you, you have discretion to believe all or part of an expert's testimony. Just because you believe the first paragraph of the expert's report doesn't mean you believe the last paragraph. That is your determination. And you have, the court vests you with considerable room and breadth to make that decision, provided it's a decision that's based on the record. And it has to be what's called substantial evidence. It can't be speculation. It can't be conjecture. Last meeting, I gave you some examples of what I felt were conjecture and speculation. And I'll give you another one or a couple more as we go along if there's questions that relate to that. So let me start by saying, let me continue by saying that decision I will ask you to make first, which is on IW 23-08. Subsequent to that decision, I'll be asking you to make a decision on the SEPA interveners application, which is also a part of this, of your file. And that's part of your duties, is to determine whether or not that this application poses an unreasonable risk of adverse impact to the wetlands and water courses of the state or the natural resources. And that's pursuant to a different statute. Your criteria, I will instruct you, is similar criteria, which is set forth in general statutes and also in your regulations. So I'm going to review those with you now. Any questions so far? Okay, so in front of you, staff has prepared. First, I'll go over the motion for approval. So there is evidence in this case, in this record. First of all, the application has been made. It is clear that there is regulated activity. The commission has found already that there is a likelihood of substantial impact. Henceforth, you've had the public hearings, right? So everybody's clear on those points, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, once that finding is made on the 23-08 application, then those public hearings took place. We then received, as a commission, we meaning the commission, received engineering reviews. We received I believe there was a peer review from BL companies that we reviewed. We also received the interveners, engineering and other environmental professional reports, along with, of course, the applicant's engineering environmental reports. And so in the motion for approval, if you feel, one of the findings you'd have to make is that the applicant, because it was deemed to be a substantial impact, that you would have to find, one, that you have to be satisfied the applicant provided feasible and prudent alternatives to the plan, including the latest revised plan. And that further reduced the wetlands and water course impact. Now, and one of those examples that we found and we noted in the record, which you may recall, was that one of the crossings, they put a bridge. They bridged it in order to reduce the wetland impact. And the report did demonstrate that. And the map also demonstrated that. So under 10.2.2 of your regulations, that could be a finding that the applicant has complied with that provision. If you find that was a feasible and prudent alternative, you still, by the way, have the discretion to make that judgment as well. You can decide whether the feasible and prudent alternative is something you're satisfied with. You're not required to accept the applicant's alternative. You're not required to accept the intervener's alternatives. You may recommend your own. And you'll see that as we move forward. Okay. The second finding that you would make would be under 10.2.1 that there were best management practices have been employed, and that the recommended minimum of 80% removal of TSS, those are the total suspended solids, has been achieved. And there was evidence, information in the file from the applicant's expert that had been accomplished, and that there were the proposed stormwater practices did indeed constitute best management practices. The other is that the soil and erosion control plan met the 2002 guidelines. Next is that there were sufficient separation distances regarding the stormwater management and the excavation and grading, and that was done in an effort to avoid adverse short-term or long-term impacts, to minimize those on the site. And there was evidence in this record of that. We also found evidence that plans provided for mitigation. You've heard the term mitigation, creation of or compensatory wetlands. that is contained in your regulations. That is a factor to be considered. It's also your regulations and the criteria that you utilize to evaluate this application is also mirrored. Your regulations mirror the state statute, which also sets forth similar, almost identical criteria that you utilize to evaluate the application. There also, you would, if you turn to the next page, you will see that there is a determination that the environmental impact has been through the plant, as a result of the plan revisions, has reduced the impact given the site's developable upland areas. And they've accomplished the best management practices to renovate these stormwater beds, and they will not cause adverse impacts to the receiving surface waters. There's evidence in the record to support that finding. Also, the purpose for the regulated activity in 10.2.2, and any feasible prudent alternative would achieve the same purpose with lesser or no environmental impact to the wetlands. The purpose of this is that this application is a multifamily residential development. The alternatives that would cause less impact have been explored and presented. And this finding is that the final revision to the plan represents the feasible and prudent alternative. Now, there's been much discussion, debate about what is feasible and what is prudent. What is feasible is deemed to be what is engineerically feasible on the site. So, and what is prudent, I want to quote from the statute, but what is prudent is a determination of what is economically, socially, and socially acceptable for the site. And that represents a balance that I spoke to you about last week. The balance between the right of the property owner, owns the property, to develop his property, and the concomitant opposite, which is sometimes opposite, which is to protect the wetlands and watercourses. So what happens is the statute was created to protect the wetlands and watercourses, but to also recognize the rights of the property owner. And your job is to balance that. And how do you do that? You do it by evaluating each application individually pursuant to the criteria in 10.2. which is, I said, mirrored in 22A-41. Okay, the same criteria. And that's what we're discussing right now on this draft motion to approve. So let me continue with that. The next part is we talked about, and there was evidence about the short and long-term impacts. You would make a finding on page 2 regarding that relationship. And it would be a finding that the construction disturbances are not substantial or adverse, and that the discharge of the stormwater will not result in permanent long-term impact to the regulated resources. That would be something that you would find. You would find. You also would determine that there would not be a loss of highly functional and valuable wetlands at the 3 crossings, and that the compensatory mitigation at the one location is sufficient in scope and size to replace the lost function and values of that wetlands that is being disturbed. Remember, it's the wetlands at the 3 crossings are your disturbances. The upland review area is a regulated area, but the upland review area, it comes into play only but to the extent that development of that area would tend to cause adverse impact to the wetlands down below. So there has to be evidence, scientific evidence that takes. We'll talk about that in the next motion, because there is evidence in the record about that. Okay, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying there's evidence both ways. I'm going now with the evidence that's in favor of an approval. Okay, all right. Mitigation measures, we just spoke about that. And those are measures that include minimizing the pollution or environmental damage, increasing the environmental quality of the area, and restore or enhancing the environmental resources. And it's particularly set forth in 10.2.5 of your regulations. And the most common mitigation measures, aside from the protecting the ecologic balance, is usually the creation of additional wetlands to replace what is being harmed. That's the normal mitigation strategy. But it can be, it could be for restoration, creation, or creation of a wetland, okay? One of the factors you would consider in approving would be that the regulated activities with the 3 crossings meet the standards for the water quality protection. And that they do not jeopardize the function and health of the wetlands and water courses. There is evidence and testimony in the record that supports that. The next provision that we found had support in the record was that the discharge of the stormwater. There's evidence in the record that offsite, certainly there's no upstream harm, but the downstream and any offsite regulated resources will be protected. There is evidence in the record that says that. There's expert testimony. So that's another finding that you could make. The other is that the soil and erosion control guidelines. So your wetlands regulations incorporate the standards set forth in your subdivision, by the way, your zoning regulations. That's how that's how the stormwater and the soil erosion measures stormwater guidelines get tied in, because they're not specifically contained in your wetlands regulations. They're in the subdivision regulations, but your wetlands regulations incorporate them by reference, okay? So that's how, when you look through your regulations, you won't see a specific reference, but you'll see a reference to the other regulations. So that's how they are tied in. And they're all part of a statutory and regulatory scheme. So those would be the rationale for an approval if it was found to exist. And some conditions, the conditions are on pages 3 and 4. That there was some commentary we found in the record regarding the compensatory mitigation plan needing some more detail. I don't know if anybody remembers that testimony, or those. I'm not sure if any of the commissioners recall that, but so that was provided as a condition. And also a detailed plan to remove the invasive species. It was noted that an invasive species removal plan would be submitted subsequent. So that would be a condition if you decided to approve. Also, there was a condition that we thought made sense, because there was discussion regarding the testing of the brook. Now, if you remember, I know I see the chair shaking her head, yes. There was some comments and discussions about if this proposal was approved. By the way, you're not approving a project, you're approving a wetlands disturbance. You're not voting on a multi-unit project. You're voting on a wetlands disturbance. Okay, you're not voting. You're not the zoning commission. So that is something that goes that's in a whole nother world, the zoning part of this case. But we did have a discussion about the quality of Longmeadow Brook. And there was some discussion about how important that was to the ecosystem, and how the borough has treated that resource. And we also and I think specifically we discussed the testing and the management protocols testing protocols we put in place for the borough of Naugatuck when they were building the high school. Now, there were some members of let's just say that was not, I think the commission did a terrific job. monitoring that water course throughout the development of the high school on the turf field. Some thought that maybe the commission overdid it a little bit, but it was necessary, it was felt by the commission to ensure the quality of the water in that water course, and I believe the testing went on for 5 years.
5 years.
5 years.
And the quality is great now, much better than it was.
Right.
I
And which
think
is,
that's a win.
which is what the engineer at the time, engineering firm at the time promised, that the
Yeah.
water quality would actually improve. And so with the testing, in fact, confirmed that. And it also confirmed that there were no metals discharged. The sinks were not found in the brook except for one test out
It
of,
was an anomaly.
and it was an anomaly test, and it never came back after one of them out of 10, I believe, 10 or
Correct.
12.
Mhm.
So that's the reason for the suggestion as a condition in paragraph number 3, if the commissioners can peruse that on their own there. We also suggested that as a condition that there be a third party, ENS erosion control specialist who will monitor the construction activities and the soil erosion controls on a monthly basis. And maintain those monthly monitoring memorandum, and it'll be provided to the commission. And what we've done on other projects, I think we did this at the high school up on, we had a lot of status reports, site reports in connection with the school.
Yeah.
Normally, yes, it goes to commission, but it really goes to staff who keeps a weekly or monthly log and watches what's happening. And, we do have the services of the borough engineer to assist in interpreting the data. And also, I know that staff, Lori and Ed, are very diligent about going out to sites and monitoring them, making sure that they meet, they're doing their job and complying with the standards that we set. The other suggestion was the applicant would provide also a geotech investigation. And if there's any discrepancies between the existing and the updated survey, that would come before the commissions if it results in a warranted modification. If a modification is warranted, they'd have to come back here. If it doesn't result in a modification, then they wouldn't have to return. The other is that the applicant would place all areas outside the construction limits within a conservation easement. That was another recommended condition that we suggested. And the other is that there would be detailed construction narrative, and we listed the scale plan, and for each of the temporary wetland impacts associated with the sewer connections. That's the other connection. So, and that they should be monitored for at least 2 years. And that narrative will be reviewed and approved by town staff and or their peer reviewers. So that's an outline of your considerations of the considerations that you might choose to make if you decide to approve the application and the conditions associated with them that staff recommends. Having said that, I'll repeat it, that there is substantial evidence to support these findings with those conditions. Now, let's go to the second motion related to
Option 2.
let's go, that was option 1. Let's go to option 2.
Option 2.
Okay, we're going to option 2. Everybody hold their breath. Okay, option 2. This is a draft motion for denial. As I mentioned several times now, it is staff's belief that there is sufficient evidence, substantial evidence in the record that would support findings to support the commission's decision, frankly, either way in this case. Because the expert testimony is divergent. They are not consistent. They conflict in some chief regards. There's some commonality, but there is some significant conflict. So let me just summarize what we're what we think you can find. So aside from on the first page, it's really the first provision, first paragraph talks about what the application consists of, where it's located, what the regulated resources are. And paragraph number 3 talks about the subject site includes a high quality wetlands associated with Long Meadow Pond Brook, which is a low quality wetland, cold water stream according to Kingsmark. So you've got a couple of things to look at there. You also could find that according to SLR's watercourse and wetlands impact, the Long Meadow Pond Brook is a Class A surface water and riparian wetland corridor. It's a highly functioning resource and has 8 principal functions and values. This is what SLR found. There's also, you could also find from the evidence that the regulated activities, including the construction and the crossings, total 3,280 square feet of permanent impacts, 2 of which are proposed to allow access, the upland sections, to the, let's see, upland sections, I think, to the site, and then also to the east of Long Meadow Pond Brook, as well as to the south, an area that can be accessed through, it says, it's actually Rubber Avenue, should say Rubber Avenue there. Other activities that are noted in the plan is clearing associated with the upland review area, and the upland review area, and that totals 7.23 acres is that disturbance. And then there's a discharge that all the water discharges into the stormwater management systems at 6 different locations. And there's also a temporary disturbance of the wetlands of about 6,140 square feet at the 2 locations, which are connected to the sanitary sewer shown on the plans. And I have we had the last revision date of January 26, 2024. Okay. And there's also supporting documentation that's in this record that you heard testimony about. And I know the hearings were lengthy and a lot of this is technical, but we can assure you that all this information and these facts are found in this record. Some of the other provisions subsequent to this just highlight the dates of the plans, and the revised date I mentioned, the last was January 26, 2024. The next provision talks about the BL companies providing environmental and engineering reviews. And the final letter from BL companies was dated February 6, 2024. These are important citations to the record because that's the basis, again, for which you make a decision. It's based on evidence in the record. It's not based on anything else. Also, this record also contains responses by SLR, the final Southwest District report, and also response to the second peer review. The intervener had also comments here that noted that the intervener filed a verified application, a verified pleading under section 22A-19. And there were engineering and environmental reports and experts presented on behalf of the intervener. And those experts are listed here. You can see them: Trinkus Engineering and Stephen Dancer. If you remember, Mr. Trinkus is the engineer, and Mr. or Dr. Dancer is the soil scientist. And I think he might be an ecologist as well. I think that's on his letterhead. So now there's also evidence in the record that again, I don't believe that either party would dispute that it's a fact that the commission found that the proposed activities constitute a significant activity which required public hearing. I don't believe that the applicant or certainly the interveners wouldn't claim that, but I don't believe the applicant would argue that the activities did not constitute a significant activity. But certainly, the evidence is there, and it's a fact that you found it, and we had public hearings. So the public hearing was open on November 1, 63 days of extension. It was closed on February 7, 2024, as allowed by law. And again, the parts of this indicates that you have received the written and oral testimony from all the experts, both the applicant's engineering experts, the SLR, which is the commission, and I'm sorry, SLR is the applicant's engineering and environmental professionals, the commission peer reviewer, and also the interveners experts who we just noted. The commission, you have reviewed all of those. I know all of you have spent considerable time looking at reports, and I know some of you have gone and listened actually to the testimony, reviewed the testimony, and which is a very difficult chore. And I know you have your own notes. I've noticed many of you taking notes throughout the hearings, and that's commendable. It is also in this record, and you are also able to find that the SLR, while showing that the 80% TSS standard has been met, they also indicate that the total nitrogen and phosphorus removal is 0. And that it is felt that, and you could find that in that regard, that part of the application does not meet the Connecticut Deep Stormwater Quality Manual. And the next part is with regard that you could find is that there was not sufficient detail and analysis provided with regard to the compensatory wetland mitigation. Remember, I touched on that when we talked about an approval. That would have been a condition that they would submit a detailed mitigation plan. If you recall, you could look at it the other way, and you would have the discretion to make it a condition if you were to approve that they submit that subsequent. This is saying that you're not satisfied that their application met the detail and analysis necessary that provided that information, to provide that information for you. That's paragraph 15. On the next page, we talk about the same lack of detail with regard to the sewer crossings. There is evidence in the record of that. 17 talks about some comments with regard to the additional removal of the TSS, but we couldn't find any on the plans or in the details, on the detail sheets. So you could find that. 18 under 10.2.10 of your regulation, you could find that the plan does not include a long-term management program for open spaces and environmentally sensitive locations such as the Long Meadow Pond Brook, riparian corridors, and the upland buffers to the regulated resources, which are seen on the plan. But there was not a long-term management plan. Now, this is another one of those matters where if you did approve it, you could make that a condition that they supply that later, long-term management plan. Okay, does everybody follow me on that? I know this is a little confusing, but okay. So as we go forward, the next section of this motion, and by the way, this is all just for the commission, but we know this is certainly, everything here is on the record, it is in public, and the commission has been instructed not to engage in discussions regarding this matter with anyone except at this last meeting and at this meeting. And I'd like to also indicate that while this might be tedious for the public, this motion alone is 6 pages. So I'm trying to summarize it with enough detail so the commissioners, while they're reading along, may also have an opportunity to digest all the information. and the findings that staff has determined are adequately supported by this record. The next section on on page 3 talks about that I've spoken to you before about the Wetlands Act, which is, and the criteria by which you make your decision. If you remember last month, I said, look, it's not black and it's not white. The reason there's regulations is because you get to make a decision on an application. The statute doesn't say you get to make a decision because you like the applicant and you dislike the applicant. You get to make the decision by using criteria that are set forth in the statute. There's a whole list of criteria, which is 22A-41, and it's also mirrored in 10.2 of your regulations. So they're almost the same. They're identical criteria. And the next section goes over all those criteria. And that's the analysis that you make. And the expert evidence that you've heard really a lot of it pertains to the compliance or non-compliance with these provisions. And I'm going to start with section 10.1. 10.1, and you reference there on page 3, is that according to this record, there is a likely non-point pollution discharge to the wetlands that are not compliant with the deep stormwater quality manual as mentioned before, which includes
10.2.
10.2.1, right? I'm sorry, did I say the wrong one?
You said yes.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, thank you. I have my glasses on.
Okay.
So it is 10.2.1. It does look like a 4 to me.
Yeah.
But so it could result in the release of sediment, nutrient enrichments and the phosphorus and nitrogen that we talked about before, and will likely have an adverse impact on the wetlands and aquatic ecosystems by the metals that are being discharged. So that's a finding that you could make, is supported by, in our opinion, by the record. And that's something that hopefully, that we see that you could find. There's also number 2 talks about the feasible prudent alternative analysis again. Could they achieve the same basic purpose or lesser or no environmental impact or to the wetlands and watercourses? That's section 10.2.2. The alternatives would cause less impact, could include single family homes for which it is zoned. Now, remember, the record that I recall did not show a subdivision of the entire property. I think there was some map submitted for a piece of it, maybe a six or seven lots, or there was it wasn't the entire piece. So you're not making the finding that alternative is, you're not making a finding if that's what you want to see, or you're saying that is the alternative. That's not what this motion says, okay? Just so we're clear.
It's just an example of an alternative.
Correct. And I'm not sure that example, I don't think it included the whole, that's what the way we looked at the record and the map that was submitted, it did not constitute the whole piece. It constituted a part of the property. In other words, it didn't constitute all of it. You know what I mean? So, in our R30 subdivision, there would be an applicant could come in with, and again, he'd have to come back here though, you see if there's wetlands impacts. So, which there probably will be. The other part is that as you go through your regulations, 10.2.3 is the impacts of the short and long term impacts of the wetlands activities, construction disturbances. They're short term, but there is enough evidence in this record for you to find that they are not only substantial, but some of the losses will be permanent, and there are some permanent losses. That alone is not. That alone is a finding. It may or may not be determinative depending on how you view it. Also you may determine from this record, as noted before, that the stormwater management, because it's not, you don't feel it's compliant, partly with the 2004 deep stormwater manual, that it could result and will likely result, not could, likely result in long-term impacts to the resources. But there's evidence in the record to support that, again, depending on which expert you believe, right? We also talking about the functions and values of the wetlands, which is 10.2.4 of your regulations, regarding the irretrievable loss, which are caused by the wetlands. I mean, you may determine from this record that there are highly functioning wetlands, that are being lost, irretrievably lost. And that and again, the proposed compensatory mitigation plan, is not detailed enough to replace, to sufficiently explain how they're going to replace the lost function and values of the valuable wetland resource. They are disturbing. So there is evidence in the record for you to make that finding. The mitigation measures is something you also can evaluate, and again, it's reflective of the deep 2004 stormwater quality manual, and there is evidence in this record that that there seems to be some lack of detail. I believe this is pointed out by BL, I believe one of the experts pointed out that there was not sufficient detail into how those, again, as I said above, the function of values that are lost would be mitigated at the proposed area. And that's 10.2.5 your regulations. 10.2.6 talks about the character, the degree and character of the interference caused by the regulated activity. And it outlines the three crossings and the requirements of the deep stormwater quality manual, both as to volume and water quality. And there is some evidence in the record that the regulated activity unnecessarily jeopardizes the function and health of the wetlands and watercourse resources. And that there are alternative ways to cause less injury to the regulated resources. Again, this type of finding is, I think, supported by some expert testimony in your record, should you choose to believe. The next part is the impact of the proposed activity outside the area. There is the discharge of stormwater, which in the way that was described in prior in this part of this draft motion, that does not meet the stormwater quality manual. And it is felt that, and there is evidence in this record, that there would be impacts, not just to the on-site wetlands, but also segments downstream of the property. The next part.
Can you read it? No, sorry.
Oh my God, can you read that?
I can.
Alicia, yeah. Okay, so then, there is some evidence in the record about the application lacking in providing open space and conservation easements and the long-term management program for the protection of the valuable resources. Remember, we talked about that when I talked about approval, and you make this a subject to providing a long-term mitigation plan. So this is saying that you're able to find, based on staff's belief, that this information, this is a finding that you may rely on in determining that the proposal lacks sufficient detail for the protection and preservation of the valuable resources long term on I think this is the offsite, I believe. I think we can this with the offsite. Okay. So those are the facts. of your, or the observations that and determinations that staff has made in reviewing all the expert testimony, the submissions, the public information, which has value to this commission. Because it provided a lot of support for really the background and support for the expert and basis for some of the experts' testimony. That's where I saw the value, and the value is obviously they're interested, but in terms of substantial evidence in a wetlands determination like this, and a determination of this nature, courts are more and more relying on expert testimony to determine whether or not a stormwater management system is going to cause an adverse impact to the wetlands or not. Does the stormwater management system meet the state stormwater guidelines? And by the way, there's the new stormwater manuals is out, and it's gonna be, you'll see how that's gonna be placed effective as we're going forward very soon. So, and by the way, that's a higher removal standard than this one. That's a 90% removal standard. So the point about that is that you have to evaluate how you view the evidence that you've submitted. And there is ample information and expert testimony. As I said, the public information provided a backdrop and support for actually it provided anecdotal support for experts on both sides, the way I reviewed all these reports and records. So I think it was valuable in that regard. However, when you're talking about these scientific determinations, the courts have made it very clear. These are expert matters which require expert determination. And as much as we love lay people and we love lawyers, by the way, what lawyers say, by the way, means nothing. Just so you know. No, I mean it. What I say means nothing here. And what, there's my button. When my attorney Luopecki says that means nothing. It doesn't mean anything. It helps frame the issues, but it's not evidence. It's not. And what I say is what is said in this record is evidence. And how you see it is your determination. So those are the two motions, a summary of those two motions. And I'd like for the commission to, if we think it's appropriate do you want to have a discussion about those topics, or would you like me to go into the SEPA?
All very fresh. So let's get,
Yeah.
do you want to continue the discussion with, to approve or to deny, or would you like to go in and give a summary about the SEPA piece, which is the interveners burden of proof? That won't be a lot shorter. Want to continue on? Continue on.
Okay. Please keep the drafts handy so that you can
Yes.
refer back to them. All right, so with regard to the SEPA petition, so this is the second or another action I'm going to request that you make a decision on. SEPA is known as it's called SEPA, it's an acronym. It means that it's really the Connecticut, it's the mini EPA Act. So that's why it's called SEPA. It's a 22/19 intervener, a petition which was made on behalf of the intervener by Attorney Luopecki. And I believe that was Mr. Recorder, not sure, Carnacchia was the named intervener in that application, right?
I believe so.
So that, under that statute, the commission makes a determination, and that intervener application, I believe, was received by the commission on November 1, 2023. And based on, again, the evidence in the record, that the intervener you have to make a determination, and I'll go for I'm gonna go for in a different way. You're gonna make a determination, whether or not the intervener has met its burden of proof, or in this case, his burden of proof. That the proposal, the proposed plan is reasonably likely to unreasonably pollute. So only a lawyer could have written that paragraph, right?
Okay.
All right, so, but the standard is that the proposed plan is reasonably likely to unreasonably pollute, impair, destroy the public trust in the wetlands and watercourses in the property. And that it will result in direct and adverse impacts to the wetlands and watercourses through filling, erosion, sediment, impairment of ecological integrity, habitat loss, and indirect and direct impacts to the water quality of wetlands and watercourses. That essentially is saying that if you believe that the intervener and its experts have met their burden of proof, and you believe that they have proved that, then you would vote in favor of this petition. And when you vote on it, I'll make sure that we're clear on how we do that, okay? All right. So again, there is also, and there is enough evidence, by the way, as I mentioned, on both sides here. There's evidence to support that there is an unreasonable, the plan is reasonably likely to unreasonably pollute, impair, or injure, adverse impact of wetlands. There's also substantial evidence in my view, and our view of the staff, that the impacts are not reasonably likely to unreasonably pollute, based on all the measures that have been taken and all the steps have been taken to mitigate and institute management practices and stormwater controls. We think there's evidence on both sides. So you would have to conclude, if you decide that that you're going to find that the petition they have met their burden of proof, then the applicant, this is a little tricky, but the applicant then has to show that there's feasible and prudent alternatives, and then you would determine whether or not that burden has been met. So my sense here is that, and the other side of that, by the way, is that you determine that the intervener has not met their burden of proof, and so their intervention petition would just be denied. They haven't met their burden of proof that there's a reasonable likelihood of unreasonable pollution. Okay, so my suggestion is that we go to the first motion, the 23-08, is it 08?
Yes.
23-08 application first, and have a discussion on that,
Mhm.
and then move on to the next one once we've made a decision on that one, Madam
Yep.
Chair, if I might.
I
All right?
agree. Yep.
Okay, so any questions? Go ahead, Madam Chair.
Any
Turn back to-
questions from the commissioners for Ned? No, on anything that you explained, we all, understand everything? Okay. So, as he said, there's a lot here, as we all know, is that there are reasons that we could approve this, there's reasons that we could deny this. Some of the reasons, we could approve it with conditions, which we normally do. But if we approve this, is this really the best for the wetlands? Have our regulations been met with this? In looking at everything and what Ned had explained and going through all the findings and facts, my concern, a couple concerns would be the stormwater management. And that, that's highly critical. I guess it's so critical that state is coming up with new regulations to make it even tighter, so, which we haven't seen yet, but to me that signifies how important stormwater management actually is. And because of that, I did make some notes, and I'm sure you guys did too. is that, that according to 10.2. Let's see. 10.2.2 is it two? Look through it. Sorry, there's a lot of material here. What's one, Marcia? Which one did it? The stormwater management? 10.2.1 is our regulation regarding the stormwater management. And that, based on the information that we have, it did not meet the guidelines for Connecticut DEP's 2004 Stormwater Quality Manual, which sets out the best management practices and design criteria for protecting and improving water quality. With that, and as was pointed out, that it didn't even mention about the nitrogen and the phosphorus. Doesn't make that interesting. Page 3?
Yeah.
This one right here? Okay. It'll likely result in a release of fine sediment, nutrient enrichments of streams by phosphorus and nitrogen, increased turbidity in the receiving surface waters, and likely adverse effects upon wetland and aquatic ecosystems by metals. So, as we know, and as we've been discussing it, and it's been brought up continually, Long Meadow Brook we spent a lot of time and money cleaning it up. There's nothing in here that's telling us that it's going to mitigate that it's going to make it better, or at least the same as where it is. There's nothing in here for that. I would be really upset if we let this go through and whatever stormwater management comes through on that, it ruins the brook, that so much time and energy is spent cleaning that up. You know, I mean, there's fish there now, it was beautiful. A lot of time went into that, and it's a beautiful piece.
Can I just add on to that, Tracy?
Absolutely.
I thought that, Steve Trinkus, did a really good job explaining that to us and, explaining how the metals were not getting removed, and what also happens with the increase in flooding with I know that's not necessarily, related to this section, but he did talk about the, I forget which ecosystem it is, but the little tiny organisms that, are at the bottom of the food chain. So I think that whole discussion was really interesting, and I found, him, to be credible with that, with the stormwater management and not being met.
Agreed. That, and not only that, with 10.2.1, about the pollutants in there, the nitrogen, but also metals and hydrocarbons as well, which not good. Also, I found and agree that, regarding feasible and prudent alternatives to the plan, that even though there were several versions submitted, I don't think that, there may be other feasible and prudent alternatives to that site. That can still be brought forth and worked on, what those are, I couldn't tell you, but, I can say I think that there's still more that can be done there, obviously. Let's see what else. Talked about pollution. Pollution's a big thing. Feasible and prudent alternatives, our environmental impact of the area. But releasing the sediments and the nutrients. detailed, sufficient detailed analysis has not been provided in regard to the proposed compensatory wetland mitigation, including the rationale for selecting a specific area, detailed implementation of planning material tables, including landscaping plan, as well as soil, seasonal groundwater data analysis. You know, it's, with a project of this size, with covering over 40% of it is wetland, why wouldn't that be included in there? Well, that's kind of important, you know, you're coming before a wetland commission, you would think that you would include that information in your plan somewhere. So it should have been there. And, you know, I can say that the initial plan that we received, I was very disappointed in. I really figured that the applicant would have known better. There was so much missing from it, and that's one reason why it had to be revised, that it never should have even left their hands to come there, in my opinion. Marcia, anything on your end? I'm just gonna go around.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I have a few things, so regarding, the alternative. I know, I asked for, an alternative that would, you know, had construction and disturbances out of the 100-foot, upland review area, and we never saw anything. I thought the engineer, the applicant's engineer, maybe would provide something based on a dialogue we had at the December meeting, but, you know, we haven't seen anything regarding that. The only thing, you know, remotely close to out of the 100-foot was submitted by the intervener, which, you know, covers one section of the site, but not another. But we do know that there is property, on both roads that could be used, as an alternative. You know, that is out there, that's away from the river crossing, that's not in the steep slope area. I still have a big concern with that fact that, there's so much disturbance where it's very steep. So I would have liked to see an alternative that, you know, stayed out of that area and just had less impact to the wetlands and the upland area. You know, I'm still, I still have problems with the potentially unknown contaminants on the site. I don't know, you know, how to deal with that necessarily, but I just know that we've been, you know, kind of warned by the public, by Southwest Soil, by Kingsmark, that the site should be investigated. So I have a big concern with that as well. And that's all for now. Yeah, I'll pass it on to the rest.
Brian?
You guys pretty much covered the things I was thinking of. I mean, my biggest concern is the ongoing management and upkeep. That's about it.
Thank you. Wendy?
I want to echo what you said, Tracy. Those are some of my concerns as well. In addition, on the draft that was provided to us, I just highlighted a couple of lines.
Okay.
One that stands out that you've already mentioned, includes in part likely adverse effects upon wetland and aquatic ecosystems by metals. That's a real concern. If the area is clean to the point where the metals are not currently there, I don't want to reintroduce them.
Good point.
I prefer not to reintroduce them if I had a choice. Couple other things I just highlighted, when this was being explained to us, and throughout the entire document, it just seems to me, that the words irreversible and irretrievable are pertinent and keep coming up and coming up and coming up over and over and over. Stormwater runoff is another big issue that seems to be repetitively repeated. That's all for now.
Thank you. Louise?
The only thing, I agree with, I agree, oh, I'm sorry. I agree with everything, and unfortunately, I'm last. But I agree.
Last but not least.
That's right, and it actually, that you chose that. But, I agree that, like, everything that everybody said, it's the losses that would be permanent that really bother me. And the long-term impact. And the stormwater, the deep, and how it doesn't adhere to the, 2004 manual. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
So then may I ask, Chair, if,
Sure.
so I have presented you, the commissioners, with a draft motion for approval, which is option one. A draft motion, and yeah, by the way, a draft motion for approval was with conditions, that's option one. A draft motion for denial is option two. Does the commission feel comfortable with either motion, or does it wish to make changes to any of the draft motions? And is the commission prepared to vote on either option or a motion that the commissioners feel is more suitable that we could amend here?
I'm fine with the way it's written here. You know, I mean, we've all read this time and time and time again, and we have made edits, you know, to it. And there's some edits made to it, just, you know, even if it's just, you know, dramatically, but, I'm okay with it the way it is. It is pretty expensive, but you know, I mean, this is an expensive project. Well, a lot went into this. We've been working on this since, what, September? And seen the revisions and heard everybody and heard the residents that, you know, although may not be an expert, I mean, they live there, they see what goes on, you know? So even though I live on the other side of the town, it's still my town and I'm still concerned. So, you know, that happens. If you guys are ready to vote,
I just had,
Yep.
on number 8, on page 2, it's very minor, but I don't know if we need to add in the February 7th SLR response to BL companies.
well, it's saying that an SLR response to the second peer review by B&L was submitted. It's a fact. So.
Are you,
No, but it was dated February 7th.
that's,
February.
It was I mean, it's minor, but I don't know.
it says the responses was submitted on February 7th. And it's kind of worded in a long-winded way, probably should have had a comma before that, or that should have been,
An SLR.
was submitted on the top as opposed on the bottom, but is that what you're saying?
Oh, so you're saying the dates are switched maybe?
What do you want?
We have it,
I don't know.
we had the record that SLR submitted that report on February 7th, is that what you were?
That's what it's dated.
Right, well,
That other one is.
So SLR responded to Southwest on February 7th, but they
Right.
responded to B&L on January 25th.
there were two reports
There
that
were two
there were two
reports,
reports that I found.
Right,
So
but here's another one.
that's SLR to Jim Stewart.
Yeah, but it's regarding the travel February 6th.
Which was from B&L responded on February 6th, so it's probably.
I just wanted to get it like.
No, we can add
You
it,
can add it.
you can add it, what is the date of that?
So this is dated. The SLR responded on February 7th to James Stewart regarding B&L's responses dated February 6th.
Okay, to James Stewart, what's the date of that letter, sorry,
February 7th,
27, yeah, 2024,
yep.
so it's a response to James Stewart,
James Stewart, yes.
okay. I mean, that's clearly in the record.
Mhm.
We have that, I've seen that.
No, that's fine. I just wanted it to be.
SLR.
I just wanted it to be.
It's SLR's,
Right, for-
it's clearly in the record, I've seen it.
Yep, it's here. Do you want a copy?
No, I've seen that
This
report,
one
it's not listed here,
Okay, show it out.
okay, yeah, in fact, there's the stamp on it.
So what am I writing?
We're just saying that we're just adding, it's responses by SLR.
Yeah,
SLR response to Jim
To Jim
Stewart.
Stewart and SLR's response to Jim Stewart dated February 7th, 2024, to James, that's right, just to James Stewart, okay.
yes.
February 7th.
You,
Yeah,
I know it, this is in your.
yeah, I
file.
have it.
Okay, you don't need this copy, but it is
No,
stamped.
that's much.
Okay, so,
Okay.
pardon me.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else? Any other edits?
No, I mean, I just don't know what to do about the, you know, the lack of response to the toxicity on the site, potential
I
toxicity.
would say that, I will, if you want my view of that, I would say that it's not a matter of substantial evidence because there's no evidence that there is a likely, that there's likely adverse impact that I saw in the record as a result of whatever it is on the site. And that's where the case law is, and the Avalon Bay and the River Bend cases have both made that very clear. That the commission is not allowed to speculate as to what may be or could be. And I exhort all of you to, at some point in your leisure, to take a look at those two cases, because they're very informative. They really lay out what the rules are, and they're the seminal cases, in the wetlands areas, since, the early mid 2000, I think of 10 or 11, both of them, and they make it pretty clear what the jurisdiction.
With
The
that,
jurisdiction, River Bend was actually 2004. And that actually dealt with the pesticides and mobility criteria and whether or not that could be utilized as a factor in making a decision. The court said, no, it could not, because even though an expert testified about it, there wasn't enough data and criteria submitted, and there certainly wasn't in this case. There was just a statement mention of it. Wasn't okay, it's at this level, and when it rains more than 2 inches, it's gonna migrate into the water course. There wasn't any of that type of engineering data, which is what the Riverbend case calls for, and that's a 2004 Supreme Court decision. And Avalon Bay followed that, which I believe is the second Avalon Bay case was 2011.
were there aquifers, that could be.
I
affected?
believe, it was the water course. I don't know if it was an aquifer. And I'm not sure there has to be substantial evidence. It can't just be, well, there's rubber shavings and carvings and castings, and it can't just be that there's a potential, because potentials are conjecture. Possibilities are conjecture. Likelihood of adverse impact is different, or likely adverse impact is substantial evidence. Would constitute substantial evidence if you believe it. And there's a difference between those two standards, and the court made it very clear that there's a big difference. And in fact, in the River Bend case, the commission ended up being reversed in that case, because they found that way. So, one would think that might be a criteria, but it really does not constitute substantial evidence is the answer. So,
Okay.
we're looking at option, a motion either on, with regard to option 1 or option
I'm
2, whatever.
referring to option 2. Option 2, which is motion for denial of Long Meadow Apartments IW 2308, located over multiple parcels on Webb Road and Rubber Avenue. The applicant is Apartments at Long Meadow. Regarding the finding of facts and considering those facts, including Connecticut General Statute, section 22A-41A and section 10.2 of the Naugatuck Inland Wetlands Regulations, section 10, including the environmental impact of the proposed regulated activity on wetlands and water courses. Regarding that, there is a permanent loss of wetland water courses at the 3 proposed crossings. Additionally, there is a lack of a 100-foot wide permanent vegetative setback in several locations to the central wetland associated with Long Meadow Pond Brook, which is highly valuable and functioning resource. The likely non-point source pollutant discharges directly to wetlands by stormwater management facilities that are not compliant with the guidelines of Connecticut DEP's 2004 Stormwater Quality Manual, which will likely result in the release of fine sediment, nutrient enrichment of streams by phosphorus and nitrogen, increased turbidity in the receiving surface waters, and the likely adverse effects upon wetland and aquatic ecosystems by metals. The applicant's purpose for the proposed regulated activity and any feasible and prudent alternatives to that activity which would achieve the same basic purpose with less or no environmental impact to the wetlands and watercourses. The purpose is a multifamily residential development. The alternatives that would cause less impact would include single-family homes for which the property is zoned for, regarding an R30 zone, without any permanent direct impacts to the central wetland, Long Meadow Pond Brook, or its southerly flowing perennial tributary. The relationship between the short-term and long-term impacts of the proposed regulated activity on wetlands and watercourses and the maintenance and enhancement of longer-term productivity of such wetlands and watercourses. The construction disturbances to the wetlands and watercourses are substantial, and though short-term, there will be permanent long-term loss of wetlands and regulated habitats at the 3 road crossings. Discharge of partially treated stormwater from inadequate stormwater management facilities will result in a permanent long-term impact to the regulated resources. Irreversible and irretrievable loss of wetland and watercourse resources which are caused by the proposed regulated activity. The loss of highly functioning and valuable wetlands at 2 of the 3 road crossings is irreversible and irretrievable. The proposed compensatory wetland mitigation at 1 location is not of sufficiently detailed and will not replace lost functions and values. Mitigation measures with which the commission may consider as a condition of issuing a permit include but not limited to 1, that prevent or minimize pollution or environmental damage, 2, that maintain or enhance existing environmental quality, 3, that restore, enhance, or create productive environmental resources, preferably in that order. The pollution has not been minimized since the proposed stormwater management system has not been designed following the guidelines of Connecticut DEP's 2004 Stormwater Quality Manual, which are considered mitigative measures. As a result, existing environmental quality shall not be maintained or enhanced. Restoration or enhancement of existing regulated resources are not proposed, and the proposed creation of wetland habitat at 1 location lacks sufficient detail. The rationales for selecting the specific area or how the wetland watercourse functions and values that are lost or impacted would be mitigated at the proposed area. The character and degree of injury to or interference with safety, health, or the reasonable use of property which is caused or threatened by the proposed activity. The regulated activity associated with 3 road crossings and with the stormwater management facilities that do not meet the guidelines of DEP's 2004 Stormwater Quality Manual as to both volume and water quality protection unnecessarily jeopardizes the function and health of the wetland and watercourse resources. The subject site could be developed in alternative ways to cause less injury to the regulated resources. Impacts of the proposed regulated activity on wetlands and watercourses outside the area for which the activity is proposed. This includes future activities associated with or reasonably related to the proposed regulated activity, which are made inevitable by the activity and which may have an impact on wetlands and watercourses. The application involves discharge of partially treated stormwater from stormwater management facilities that do not meet the guidelines of the DEP's 2004 Stormwater Quality Manual, and which not only impact the on-site wetlands and the on-site segment of Long Meadow Pond Brook, but also segments downstream of the property. The presence and quality of long-term management program for open spaces, conservation easements, stream corridors. That's what you added.
The paragraph below says the same.
Yes. No.
The paragraph below says
8.
the same.
Yes.
It's
Basically,
repeated,
it's repeated. Oh, okay. The proposal lacks in providing open space and conservation easements and a long-term management program for the protection and preservation of the site's valuable wetlands and watercourses. This would include the preservation and protection of riparian and buffers. Therefore, the application for Long Meadow Apartments IW 2308 is denied for the following reasons. The plans and the proposed stormwater management facilities do not meet the guidelines of Connecticut DEP's 2004 Stormwater Quality Manual, which sets out best management practices and design criteria to protect and improve water quality by reducing non-point source pollutant load pursuant to wetland regulations 10.2.1. Pollutants include but are not limited to total suspended solids, total phosphorus, total nitrogen, metals, and hydrocarbons. 2, there are feasible and prudent alternatives to the proposed plan which will better protect the highly valuable wetlands and watercourses on site, and therefore pursuant to wetland regulations 10.2.2, this application cannot be approved. The fact that the applicant provided some revisions that may have resulted in less impacts to the wetlands and watercourses did not relieve the commission of its duty to deny an application when, as here, it finds that the remaining activity was likely to have a substantial adverse effect on regulated wetlands and watercourses. The applicant must demonstrate not that some other design and or configuration would have greater impacts, but that the design being proposed does not result in adverse impact to the regulated resources. 4, the commission considers the application incomplete and inaccurate because BL's review, as well as the commission's review of the submitted plans, shows serious discrepancies between the delineated wetland boundaries and the existing topography depicted on the plans. For example, on the western side of the property where townhouses are proposed, the wetland delineations are not at all congruent with the depicted topography, such as in the wetland boundary segment from wetland boundary marker number 75A to number 78A. This type of discrepancy is critical due to the close proximity of proposed grading and stormwater discharges to wetlands and steep to very steep slopes within the development envelope. I will entertain a motion to deny application IW 2308 Long Meadow Apartments.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carried, the permit is denied. We'll move on to the people petition.
So.
Kind of a little bit, so we were just gonna take a 5-minute recess.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so. Okay, great. So now we need to go over the, motions for the SEPA petition. And I know we've already heard a lot of stuff, but I'm gonna refer back to Ned to just kind of just give us a very brief summary of what we're looking at here and how it impacts, what we're about to do.
Okay, so thank you, Madam Chair. So the SEPA petition, as I may have discussed earlier, is a petition it's a statutory proceeding, and it allows anyone really to intervene in an administrative case, which this is, as an intervener. And in this particular area, it's for the purpose of objecting to an application because it is the intervener's belief that the application is reasonably likely to cause unreasonable harm to the wetlands and watercourses located in the borough. And there is, as I mentioned several times last time and once this time, I believe, there is a burden of proof associated with that. And it's different than your prior applicant, than the 23-08. That burden of proof is on the applicant to show that the applicant, first of all, complied with the requirement of the statute in its submissions and the regulations in its submissions. And then the applicant also has it also has the burden of showing that there's no feasible prudent alternative. So that's the applicant's burden on the 23-08 petition that you just, that application. Sorry, not petition, that's an application. This is a petition. So this is this petition as I said, had in this case, the petitioner has the burden of proving that there is a reasonable likelihood of unreasonable harm to wetlands and watercourses, as I just mentioned. So you have to make a determination on that, whether or not you feel the petitioner has met its burden of proof that this application does present is reasonably likely to unreasonably harm and pollute, and impair and destroy the public trust in the wetlands and watercourses. So a vote in favor, a motion would be, if you believe that that's true, I would present that as option 2. That option 2 is a vote to state that, yes, the intervener has indeed met his burden of proof, that the application is reasonably likely to unreasonably cause harm or pollution to wetlands and watercourses, adversely impact them. Option 1 is a finding by you that you feel that from the evidence, again, the substantial evidence, and it would be mostly expert evidence in this case, because this is a matter of engineering and science, soil science, and ecological, I'd say ecological area that is, I would say, not entirely within a lay opinions realm, and the courts have recognized it as such. So based on what you've heard, option 1 would be to find that the intervener has not met its burden or his burden of proof with regard to that. So again, I'm going to give you option 1 and option 2. And option 2, we'll go back to option 2 for a second. Option 2 also would incorporate the reasons, if you do decide option 2, that it's reasonably likely to cause unreasonable harm, adverse harm to the wetlands and watercourses. The rationales are the same for that, and your findings would be the same as they were for denying the petition in the 23-08 matter that you just acted upon. So while you move to deny the application there, this vote would be to approve, that you're voting to approve the petition of the intervener in this case. How does that help you?
And one does not rely upon the other, so.
Not
we
necessarily,
may have denied that, doesn't mean
not
that we
necessarily,
approve.
it's not necessary, and even if you did that, the court has held that a commission may make inconsistent or somehow what may appear to be inconsistent conclusions. And your 23-08 decision would still, in my opinion, likely be upheld, even if you found that the applicant has not met its burden of proof, which would be your option 1. Option 2 is that the applicant has met its burden of proof. So with that explanation, if there's any questions, I'll answer them, or leave it back to the chair.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, so, just so for a motion to approve the SEPA petition would be that we did consider the claims of the intervener, that we received on November 1st, and the evidence, and concludes that the proposed plan is reasonably likely to unreasonably pollute, impair, and destroy the public trust in the wetlands and watercourses of the property, as it will result in a direct and adverse impacts to the wetlands and watercourses, including filling of wetlands, erosion and sedimentation, impairment of ecological integrity and habitat loss, and indirect and direct impacts to the water quality of wetlands and watercourses. So the evidence that the intervener, Mr. Konakjev, brought forth with his experts and the information that he provided, I feel it's likely to cause harm, basically is what it's saying, to the environment, to the wetlands and water and everything. I feel that he has met the burden of proof testimony based on the information that was provided. And I would move to approve the SEPA petition. If that's what the commission is also agreeing to, however, that's up to you. That's my thought on it. Marcia?
I agree with you as well, Tracy.
Brian?
I also agree.
And Deanne?
I agree.
Louise, and last but not least?
Definitely agree.
Thank you. Okay. So let me just read this.
So my suggestion is that the commission, okay, I would, so and have, as the commission, I would suggest that it be explained that the criteria is you're gonna
Finding
discuss
what?
the
Right.
criteria, the basis for your decision is the
Correct.
facts that you found in 2308.
Right, so based on the finding of facts and the factors contained in 22A-41A of the general statutes and section 10.2 of the Naugatuck Inland Wetlands Regulations as set forth below, and considering all relevant surrounding circumstances and factors, including the analysis of expert testimony, other feasible and prudent alternatives, or prior approvals for the entire property consistent with the reasonable requirements of the public health, safety, and welfare that would be more protective and do less harm to the highly functioning wetlands and watercourses such as single-family development consistent with existing zoning and regulations. And the findings of facts and all the criteria of IW 2308, which include but not limited to the subject site is located over multiple parcels bordered by Webb Road to the north, Rubber Avenue to the south. The subject site encompasses give or take 34.4 acres and roughly 46% consisting of wetlands and watercourses. The site development plans prepared by SLR with an original date of August 30th, 2023 were revised 3 times, with the most recent revision date being January 26th, 2024. The commission classifies the proposed activity as a significant activity requiring public hearing. By consent of the applicant, the public hearing, which was opened on November 1st, 2023, with a total of 63 days of extension and allowed by statutes, was closed on February 7th, 2024. And at the hearings, the commission received significant written and oral testimony of the public, as well as testimony and written reports of the applicant's engineering and environmental professionals, SLR, the commission's peer reviewers, which are Southwest Conservation District and BNL, and the interveners experts. In their February 6, 2024 response to the Trinkus Engineering LLC letter reports, SLR conducts their own pollutant loaded analysis in order to show that, in their opinion, the 80% TSS, which is their total suspended solids standard, has been met. However, they also document that the percent removal efficiency of the proposed stormwater management system in regard to the total nitrogen and total phosphorus is 0%. This shows that SMS, the stormwater management system, does not comply with the guidelines of the Connecticut Deep Stormwater Quality Manual. Stephen Danzer, PhD, expert for the intervener, concurred with Trinkus Engineering findings. Commission also finds that sufficient detail and analysis has not been provided in regard to the proposed compensatory wetland mitigation, including the rationale for selecting the specific area, detailed implementation notes, and planting materials tables, including a landscaping plan, as well as soils and seasonal groundwater data and analysis show wetland hydrology will be achieved. And pursuant to wetland regulations 10.2.10, the plan does not include a long-term management program for open spaces and environmentally sensitive locations such as the Long Meadow Pond Brook riparian corridor and the upland buffers to the regulated resources seen on the submitted plans. Commission has considered factors included in Connecticut General Statute Section 22A-41A and Section 10.2 of the Naugatuck Inland Wetlands Regulations, Section 10. And all this is the same facts and findings and criteria that is in the IW 23-08. And that is part of our draft for the motion of approval of the SEPA petition. Does anybody have any changes or edits or any additions to this petition? Marcia?
No.
No? Okay. Therefore, I will entertain a motion to approve SEPA petition for IW 23-08 Long Meadow Apartments, intervention under Connecticut General Statute 22A-19. Do I have, is
So moved.
there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries, so. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much for hanging in.
You wanna,
Mine's off.
You need-
you have to have.
Is there anything else? I mean,
Oh, yeah, I
Wait.
do.
Nothing.
nothing else, you can file a
Okay.
motion.
Okay,
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
thank you.
A lot of time.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Approved?
Aye.
Any abstain? Nays? All right, we'll adjourn at 8:17 PM. Thank you, everybody.
Good job, everyone.